car.
Okay.
Tell you what, Aaron,
Yeah,
let me tell you a little bit about my car.
please do.
So it basically all starts with I had accumulated wages working for my dad, and the way I was going to collect those wages was to get a car. So I was in high school, I was studying, I'd studied cars my whole junior, elementary life, and I had settled pretty well on a 74 Camaro. I thought I should order a 74 Camaro. That was the coolest. It was a Z28, of course.
Sure.
Get her all souped up. Dad wasn't sure that was a good idea, so he said we'd think about it, which meant he'd think about it.
I believe I've heard that before.
I've thought about it plenty, but
Uh-huh.
so that time kind of passed, and as the next year started to roll around, I'm studying cars again, and I come to find out that the Chevrolet division was going to discontinue their Caprice convertible in 1975. So it took me from early in the fall when I found out until clear into well into the new year before I convinced Dad that that would be an excellent thing, is to order a convertible. So sometime, I think around March, we sat down with the salesman at Toyota Chevrolet in Lake Mills, John Simonson.
That
was the salesman.
Okay.
We sat down and went from top to bottom, because that's the way you did it back then. Somebody had to do it. Typically, it was the dealers that did those things and had cars on their lot. But if you wanted to order one, you could literally go through and pick and choose every single item that you wanted or didn't want on that car. So he started at the top and convertible and what color, and I went white top. I believe they only had brown, black, white, and red. And the other three colors I thought were the brown was just hideous as can be. It was the most, so I picked a white top, but a brown interior. Saddle brown interior was my favorite color. So we got that far. Then we got to the engine, and I wanted the 454 and a high-speed rear end. So we ordered that. Positive traction, so she would get up and go right away. Then you went on to things like color-keyed floor mats was an option. If you didn't get color-keyed floor mats, they would be black. Well, black floor mats in a brown car was not acceptable, of course. So I had ordered color-keyed floor mats for I don't know, $14 or something. You know.
Yeah.
Although it was bigger money back then, but
Sure.
still it was, I had to have that. Also color-keyed that I remember specifically was the seat belts. If you didn't order color-keyed, they would come black. Well, again, black ugly seat belts and a brown interior, you could order them brown. So I ordered color-keyed brown seat belts. Seat belts only. That'll come up later. Shoulder belts were not a thing yet.
Lap belts only, you mean?
Correct.
Right.
Let's just delve into that a moment while we're here. Part of the reason that Chevrolet was discontinuing a convertible was the demand had fallen over the last 8-10 years for convertibles. They just weren't as popular as they used to be. The other contributing factor was they were going to for sure require a shoulder belt to be added in the 76s, and or thereabouts, depending on how that went. But it was going to happen. And Chevrolet really didn't want to re-engineer and figure out a way to anchor a shoulder belt in convertibles. So that was a strike against them right there. And then the rumor was, of course, that the Safety Council was going to require them to make a car so that if it flipped over, it would support itself on the four pillars, the two front A pillars and then the back B pillars, without crushing. Well, they didn't think a convertible with roll bars in it was going to be a saleable item, so they kind of decided that, given all that and the decline in the sales, they were just going to eliminate convertibles.
Can I briefly interject?
Certainly.
So we looked this up.
Yes.
In 1974, the previous model of this, the 74 convertible, there were 4,670 built in the U.S. The 75, of which this is one, there were 8,349 sold.
They did become slightly more popular
So
when
the rumor got out, apparently.
when they found out they weren't being built anymore.
Yeah.
There were a few more sold, right? The only GM model that was left was the Cadillac had an Eldorado that had a convertible. I believe it was the Eldorado.
I think that's right.
I think so. They did that in 76, and then they discontinued it as well. And their numbers did exactly the same thing. They'd been going down, and then they bounced up real quick on the last model. And being a little cocky, and this jumps ahead a little bit, but I thought it'd be fun to trade this one, the 75, the Great White Beast, for a 76 Cadillac convertible, since it was the last GM production convertible. But by that time, they had decided that dealers had decided that they were going to charge anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 above sticker price, because it was the last year it was being built. And they didn't think they could sell a one-year-old convertible for any significant, so I never made the trade. And it wasn't a good idea anyway, but anyway, that's just kind of a little background.
So the Great White Beast, the nickname,
Yes.
the origins of which seem to be lost to antiquity.
I'm still maintaining that my wife came up with that one, because she had to drive it after we had kids, and it's an enormous car.
Yeah.
Enormous doors for a young wife to get carting kids in and out of, and if you parked it in a parking space of any kind, it was hard to get the doors open, and it was hard to park it in parallel parking. So, wow, she couldn't do that at all. It's huge.
It is.
21.5-foot car. So it's.
And Great White Beast sounds like something Mom would say.
It does.
And didn't you, I think at one point you told me you put snow chains on the tires in the wintertime on occasion? Is this?
I don't know.
No?
I don't think so.
Okay,
No.
well.
I put snow tires on it one year.
Oh, well.
I did. It's studded. I did put studded snow tires on it one year. That's right. They were still legal back then. And then they shortly after that, they made them illegal because they were carving up the highways. But yeah, I did have studs on it one time. Mom was just telling she got stuck with this car in Lake Mills.
Down by the creamery, right?
Down by the creamery corner, on the road going up to the school, and the school bus drove by on the way to line up for this, pick up the kids, and then apparently, what you just told me, that later the school bus came back by there and she hadn't gotten herself out of the snow pile yet, so the bus driver had swung by the bus barn and grabbed a chain and pulled her out. It's just kind of the things that happened back then.
Sounds about right.
In small town. I didn't learn it. Oh, yeah, I didn't know about it. She didn't tell anybody. She went to visit with my mom in the afternoon at the jewelry store uptown, and Mom knew about it already.
Having heard through the grapevine?
Through the grapevine.
Indeed.
So word gets around in a small town.
That sure does.
That's how it works.
Well, let's see what other notes we have here to discuss. Oh, so
Let me finish down through the
yeah.
ordering.
Go ahead.
Okay.
There we go.
So I'll go all the way down to the last item, because I kind of went through most of them, but the last item actually was carpeted trunk. Older cars that I had a 60 Chevy, and up until this one, a car with a carpeted trunk, with anything in trunk, was just a piece of cardboard, basically. And I figured that if they're going to charge for a carpeted trunk, it's just going to be a mat laying in there, and it was, I don't know, $17 or something. It was the last item on there, and I decided I did not want that. Didn't seem like a value to me. And John said, well, you know, you've gotten every other item. Dual horn. I ordered dual horn.
Dual horn. We talked about this previously. Dual horn.
That was an ordered option.
And the advantage of the dual horn.
It gives two-tone. It's a harmonic. It sounds much better. Do you want me to honk it? Or?
No,
okay.
that's fine.
Anyway. So I hemmed and hawed about the carpeted trunk, and finally I decided, oh, what the heck, go ahead and do it. You'll get a carpeted trunk. Now, what I found out shortly after I ordered it, actually, is it's carpeted all around, and it's pretty impressive. It's, you know, if you want to keep your suitcases and golf clubs clean, it's really nice to have a carpeted trunk. So I was pretty excited about it after I found out what it was. When the car came, it did not have carpeted trunk. It had a sheet of cardboard in the bottom. I was a little disappointed, and John looked it up, and sure enough, he had remembered that I said no, and when he ordered it, he checked it off and forgot to uncheck it. So it did not, that's the only option available in this car that was not on it. So now I've got the car ordered, and could be 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. It was a very common and popular thing to scoop the loop around town. You'd just drive your car all the way through a loop of the streets from the fire station up through Main Street down to sometimes to the football field, sometimes to the swimming pool, and back again, and you'd wave at everybody that was also driving around. It was very common. I did it a lot.
We did it when I was in high school.
There you go.
It survived at least that long.
Yeah, it's kind of faded off.
Yeah,
it did fade off.
Probably not a thing anymore.
No. Anyway, it wasn't a great idea, but we burned a lot of gas that way. Gas was cheap then too, though.
Yes.
So comes a Sunday night, and I'm scooping the loop. I'm going west down Main Street, and car transport, Cooper Transport, who transported all the GM vehicles at that time, was coming up 69, up the east on Main Street. So I met this truck, and I looked, and there was a white convertible on the very top rack of the transport. So I knew he was going to pull around, park on the wrong side of the road right by Sunday night, 10 o'clock at night. He's going to park on the wrong side of the road right by Nelson Chevrolet, or Twido Chevrolet. So I continued around, got back up, parked across the street in the DX station, about a half a block away, and I sat and watched him put his ramps up and get the levels all straightened up. He was just getting ready to unchain the car, and he kind of kept glancing over at me in my car half a block away. I saw him looking at me. And pretty soon he signals to me to come over to his truck. So I get out of the car and I walk over there, and he says, "Is this by any chance your car on top of here?" I said, "Yes, sir, it is." I've been waiting for it, and there it is. And he says, "So, would you like to drive it down off the truck?" And I said, "Ain't no way in the world I would do that. You get it down on the road, and then I'll take it. I'm not screwing up this thing."
Nope.
So he gets up there and unlocks the chains and backs the car down and gets to the end of the ramps. He says, "So you want to take it?" I said, "Yep, I'll drive around the other side of the dealership and I'll put the keys in the lockbox. I know the drill. I've watched many a car come in this way." "Okay," he says, "and here's the paperwork." So I drove my car around and parked it. Turns out this is Sunday night of a Memorial Day weekend, which I hadn't actually realized that.
Mm-hmm.
I was figuring I'd pick up my car on Monday. First thing Monday, I'm going to have my new car. Well, it's a holiday, so they aren't even open on Monday. Well, that's a problem. So first thing Tuesday, I'm ready to go pick up my car.
Mm-hmm.
Bright and early, I get up there. Well, no, they have to clean it, they have to prep it and check everything, and it takes a day or two. It's usually okay. So Wednesday, I'm up there. No, I won't be ready today. Okay. Thursday, I'm up there. Well, it's we got it ready, but we still got to talk to your dad about this. So okay. And apparently Dad hadn't gotten all the finances arranged on it yet. So come Friday, I was getting pretty excited about getting my car, and I spurred Dad on enough that he actually got the finances all worked out with the bank, and I picked up the car on Friday. By Sunday, when I looked in the book here now, by Sunday, I'd put on 177 miles and had to fill up with gas again. Was enjoying my car. By the end of a year, I had 12,000 miles on it, and I had another car besides this one. So, but I was driving this one quite a bit.
Indeed.
I was still single, going to college in Iowa State. Wouldn't be married for another 4 years, 5 years. 1980, so almost 5 years. Does that cover the ordering and the delivery?
Do you remember the sticker price?
I do. It was like $8,006.
8,006.
It was.
All right.
Which a typical car at that time was probably $4,500, somewhere up as high as $6,000. This was because of the motor and because of all the extra options and stuff. It was, and they decided it was going to be sticker price since it was the last year they were making.
Right.
I didn't have to pay extra, but we did pay full sticker price for it.
Mm-hmm.
Which in the past, nobody ever paid sticker price for cars back then. That was where you started, and Usually it was easily $1,000 off of that by the time you get the dealer worked in.
So you were a sophomore in college
I was.
when you got it?
Yep.
So she went from Lake Mills to Ames quite a few times then?
Yeah. I lived in the dorms, but I came home every weekend to work, and because I didn't like staying at the dorm in the weekend, there's nothing but trouble to get into there. I came home I put 100 miles, 200 miles every weekend going home and back. And my dorm was a mile from campus, and my classes were all in the north end of campus, so it was almost another half mile. And I managed to find places to park, even though students weren't supposed to park. So I drove most days up to classes and back.
Uh-huh.
Once in a while I'd walk, but usually I drive. And many nights I'd find some reason to go driving. So it got a fair share of miles on it.
The car you took, well, not started college, but it's a car you took to college.
Yes,
Car you were driving when you met Mom for the first time.
it was. Yeah, I was State Fair. She was staying with her aunt in Des Moines and helping out with her kids because one of the boy had leukemia, so she needed some extra help. So Willie was here for the summer, and I called her up and got a date to go because there was a little matchmaking with her aunt that lives in Lake Mills and her aunt that she was visiting in Des Moines. And I went down to take her to the State Fair. She'd never been to the State Fair before. Thought it would be fun. So we went to the State Fair and saw Donnie and Marie Osmond. Wonderful.
Also drove to and from the wedding.
I did.
There exists somewhere of this car with shaving cream all over it.
It's true.
We haven't been able to find it yet. We're still working on it.
Okay. We got married in Denver at her home church. And I knew that my groomsmen would want to decorate the car. So I told them, I don't care what you do, just don't damage the car. And I left the top down, which they thought was crazy, but I said, just don't mess with the car.
Mm-hmm.
You can do whatever you can do, but just don't. No shaving cream that's going to damage the paint.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife was the cake decorator, professional cake decorator at the time, and she decorated our wedding cake with the help from another lady. Took two of them more than a full day just to do the decorating on it, so it was quite a cake.
Mm.
And in doing that, when you're setting it up, the day of the wedding, she had to take a bag of icing and finish around the edges where you put it together. So she had this bag of icing, and my best man, her cousin actually, my best friend growing up, got a hold of the icing bag, and they decorated the whole car, the whole windshield, I should say, really,
Uh-huh.
with icing, which worked out pretty good. It wasn't going to hurt anything.
Mm-hmm.
And completely out of instinct, we got in the car, and I turned it on and turned on the windshield wipers and swooshed the whole. So now instead of just writing on the windshield to look through, I had decorated the whole windshield with icing.
Yeah.
We had to clean that before we could leave. A little bit. We didn't clean it a whole lot. There you go. So we went on our honeymoon with this car.
Mm-hmm.
went down through southern Colorado, across the mountains over into Utah, came back. We're coming back towards Denver, and we're in Gunnison, Colorado. Now here's just a little tidbit. There was a period of time when checks kind of went out of favor, and I didn't realize. All I had was cash and checking account. I didn't have a credit card. I was 25 years old. I didn't have a credit card yet. Hotels at that time would only take credit card or cash. I was expecting to write checks for this stuff, and they wouldn't take a check from anybody out of anywhere. So I was kind of running out of cash. Willie had some cash with, and by the time we got to Gunnison, Colorado, still had a day drive back to, at least a day drive back to Denver. We'd run out of cash, so I was going to stop at the bank and get some cash. I had done that before. It didn't seem like, although maybe not out of state. So I went into the teller and wanted to know if I could write a check for cash, and he said, well, do you have an account with us? I said, no, I'm Iowa. Well, I can't do that. Let me see. Let me talk to the vice president and see what he can do. So I get sent into the vice president's office, and he says, nice to meet you. And I explained to him I was on my honeymoon and I'm kind of running low on cash, and I just needed to get some cash out of my account. Well, he said, can I call your bank and talk to them? I said, sure, that's fine. And then he was going to try and find the number, and so I told him the number. And he was a little surprised at that moment that I had the number of the bank right off the top of my head. But anyway, he called the bank, and as he's dialing it, he says, is there anybody I should ask for? Does anybody know you? I said, whoever answers will know me. It's fine. As it turns out, the vice president of the bank in Lake Mills, Roger Thompson, answered the phone, and this gentleman says, I have Al Skellinger here in my office, and Roger says, as soon as he said that, Roger says, well, tell him to have a happy honeymoon. And it kind of took the guy by surprise for a moment, and he said, okay. He was wanting to get some money out of his account. Is that okay? And Roger says, yeah, that's fine. He said, I didn't even tell you how much he wanted. Oh, whatever he wants, he's got it. Oh, okay. So I think I wrote for $500, and he cashed my check, and away we went. All things worked out. As this guy is hanging up, and he says, so is this kind of a small town thing? I said, yeah, it's a pretty small town. He said, does everybody know you? I said, well, yeah, probably everybody in town would know me, so. Oh, okay. Well, have a good honeymoon. Where do we go from there?
Well, February of 1983, I think you had plans on the 18th that somebody might have interrupted.
What plans did I have?
Weren't you moving into a new house?
Oh, that's right. Yes. We were moving from one house to another in town. But Aaron, you remember Aaron, Ron?
Ron.
Came a week early. So Willie had a 1-week-old baby to manage.
Mm-hmm.
while we were moving. So she was directing traffic at the new house while I was packing up and loading stuff at the other house, old house. But we actually brought Erin home from the hospital in this car. Child seats were virtually brand new at this moment. I don't know if it was January 1st or somewhere about then when they became required, but it was pretty new. And they were so new that they hadn't got a whole lot of things perfected on them yet. And what they had was 3 different sizes. There was infant, there was child, and then, infant, toddler, and child size seats. So the infant seats typically would last about 6 months for that size, and then they'd be into the toddler size. Well, for some parents, young parents usually, to buy a seat that's going to be used for 6 months was kind of cost prohibitive, which was convenient because the ladies' auxiliary at the Elberly Hospital, Navy Hospital, came up with the idea that they would buy these seats, loan them to new families to use for 6 months, and all you had to do was pay a $10 deposit on it. When you brought it back, you got $9 back. I think it cost you $1 for the time to use it, and then
that ain't bad.
No, that was pretty good. They thought that money would buy new seats or something as they needed. I don't know, whatever. It didn't cost us hardly anything, of course, to use it. That was wonderful. And then we had to get bigger seats. And then actually shortly after that, they started getting combination seats that could be adjusted some more. So it wasn't quite that bad. They made quite a bit of progress in the last
yeah.
40 years?
Yep. 40 years.
40 years. Trying to wrestle car seats and kids in and out of this was not Willie's favorite thing. So we did end up getting a 4-door Caprice shortly, well, a while after that. Made it, by the time Chelsea came around 4 years later. 4 years? No.
She's 2 years old.
2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, shortly after she was born, I think we got the other Caprice. So 4-door Caprice was a lot easier for her to use, for lugging kids around.
So, tell us about the onboard computer.
Well, it was kind of a weird set of coincidences. There was some of the European cars, I think, had come up with an idea of keeping track of fuel mileage with electronic things in the dash, but the American manufacturers really hadn't come up with that. And that idea kind of spurred me on. I don't know why. I was scrolling around in my head. It would be nice to have a way to keep track of your mileage, your gas mileage, the location of the mile markers on the highway. You know, if you wanted to get off at exit 208, you'd program that in, and it would tell you when you were getting close to 208. The only thing I figured out the speedometer adapter that would have to be developed, so it would read the revolutions of the cable that goes from the transmission to the speedometer, and you'd put an adapter in between. The only thing I couldn't quite figure out was how you were going to figure out how much fuel was being consumed. So the transducer that's required for that was the thing I hadn't exactly figured out. And I happened to actually mention this to Willie, my idea about this car computer. And she mentioned one time that her sister in Michigan, Sherry, worked for a company that made car accessories. So the next time we were in Michigan talking to them, the subject got brought up, and I kind of gave her my ideas about this car computer thing. And she said, "You'll never believe this. The company I work for is building one.
This is the Prince Company,
The
right?
Prince Corporation in Holland, Michigan. I think they're in Grand Rapids, Holland, Michigan area. Well, they have a plant in Holland. I know that. Anyway, they make everything from sun visors to, I think they made mirrors, and they made all kinds of parts for the automotive industry. I think they invented intermittent windshield wipers and the technology to, I believe it.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Hmm.
Anyway, she says the other thing is she was a purchaser. That was her job, is to purchase things from other companies to make for their products. And she says, I'm in charge of purchasing a transducer. One of the things I have to purchase is a fuel transducer for the car computer we're building. And I thought, well, there went that great idea. Okay, never mind. So I kind of forgot all about it. Well, Willie didn't forget about it, and she checked with Sherry, and long story short, it's not that short at this point, but for Christmas that next year, I got a car computer built by Prince Corporation. It was an add-on.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work yet, or right now. The lights have turned on once, briefly, and I got really excited, and then they turned off and they haven't turned back on again. So,
You may have to look at that.
yeah, I'm not sure what the story is and if that's fixable, but it is, I think it is pretty cool. Because it's all the dashboard stuff, all the bells and whistles in a modern dashboard,
Yep.
and the predecessor to, in a way, satellite navigation. You're tracking the miles to your destination,
Yes.
etc.
It doesn't do the map things that we have nowadays, but it does all the calculations basically are there, and it keeps track of your fuel. All the stuff the dashboard does today is in this add-on computer back then. So talk about the tires.
Sure.
I had one interesting. One optional item was you could have radial tuned suspension, which was fairly expensive actually. Radial tires were really pretty new right then. If you didn't get radials, you would get bias ply tires, which had been around for a number of years. They were fiberglass belted tires, but they had now come out with steel belted tires, and they called them radial tires. And then you had to buy radial tires, which were also expensive, and again, that drove the price of this up some. But the salesman convinced me that it really was a good thing. So we went ahead and got it. I drove it back and forth to school, as I mentioned, and I put 12,000 miles in the first year, and I rotated the tires fairly religiously, about between 5,000 and 10,000 miles. I'd rotate them all the way you were supposed to do with radial tires, because you had to cross them back. With bias pliers, you just moved them front to back. With radials, you had to rotate them around the car, sort of like the volleyball rotation. Goes diagonal and around. Anyway, so that was new. Anyway, I thought I was doing the best I could. As it turns out, I don't remember exactly. I think it was around 25,000 miles, and rotating in the spare as well, 5 tires. They were all getting pretty well worn out. I was coming back from college one night, actually in a rainstorm, and one of the problems with steel belted tires in the early days was the belts would break after they got worn down quite a ways, and when the tread got worn down, it put stress on the belts and they would break, so the tire would misshape itself. So I'm driving down the road and one back tire belt broke, and it nearly shook me off the road. I pulled off to the side of the road, got the jack out and looked, and the tire was still on the wheel, but bent enough that it was rubbing against the inside of the wheel well. And I had a hard time
Wow.
getting the fender skirt off to get that tire out of there. In the rain.
In the rain.
In the rain. Got it back off, put the spare on, threw everything in and got home. As soon as I possibly could, I got a hold of the car dealer and told them these tires are just not working at all. I mean, 25,000 miles and they're shot. So they had some trouble. GM had some trouble with those. They were Goodyears. GM would warranty them, prorate it, so we got some off if we put new tires on. And I didn't want radial tires. I didn't think that was a good deal. So he explained to me that they really are a good deal, and they made some improvements, and the way to really do this is to put Michelin's radials on there because they're the best. And they would actually give me some credit towards the new tires for the old ones going bad. So I said, one time I'll try, and then that'll be the end. So I put Michelin tires on there, and they never drove better in my life in a car than those brand new Michelin tires on that radial tuned suspension. So I've been a strong believer ever since, but it was a little rough in the beginning. I really never had an opportunity to, other than changing oil, I never really worked on this car. There are things that Aaron and I have worked on, or he's worked on, that I didn't even know exactly what I didn't know where the fuel filter was, for example. I hadn't changed that ever. All the old cars that I had and cars besides this were all used cars, and I worked on cars all my life, except this one because it was brand new and I didn't really work on it. So I'm learning more about this car than I knew to begin with.
We've been learning together.
Yeah. So just kind of to fill in the blank spaces there, there was let's say a disagreement between me and Dad. So I had another car by that time, and he took this car back, and because it had always been licensed in his name and insured and all that stuff, because he explained to me that that was by far the cheapest way to do it. I paid later, but that's all right. So I did get this back after my mom died, and we were settling all the things of her estate, and so I ended up getting this car back. He had it stored for a while outside. I had it stored outside my house because that's all I had room, the only place I had for it. The top was pretty well damaged. That didn't help it any sitting outside all the time. Kids climbing on it as a matter of fact.
I may have been the ringleader on that.
I didn't know this.
Oh, you knew.
Well,
You didn't know all of it,
I didn't know all of it.
but you read me the riot act at least once for
Okay.
climbing all over the car.
Well, that's good. So I did end up, a friend of mine had access to a barn, or a farm shed actually, that he had stuff stored in. So I got this car out of the weather and stored it for in that shed for about 17 years. So it's been not used for 25 or more. And the only experience I had that came similar was my 60 Chevy that I had when I was 16. Was a family car, four-door Impala, that had been in an accident in town, low-speed accident, but head on, and taken the whole front, hood, fenders. Didn't damage the doors, but so it was sitting for 3 years with a tarp over the engine off at Dad's house, or our house when I was growing up. And when I turned 15, I thought that we needed to get this car repaired, and that would be my car. So we found a front end to put on it, mounted that on it, but we couldn't get the engine to turn. And we worked for several months. Had a professional mechanic helping us too at nights. And we did everything we could think of. Starter wouldn't turn it. We couldn't get it we actually took the harmonic balancer off the front, put a 3-foot pipe wrench on and tried to turn it. It was stuck solid, couldn't turn. So we ended up taking the heads off. Actually, first, we ended up soaking them with Coke, because that was the answer, is to pour Coke down in, and that will eat away the rust. Wasn't enough, but it did do some.
How do you get the Coke back out?
Very good question. we ended up pulling the heads off. We took the heads off. That had a 348, which was a big block Chevy as well. So it had 3.5-inch pistons. And when we got the heads off, we cut a 4x4 post, rounded the corners off to make it somewhat round, and then would pound on the top of each piston in order to try and break things loose, and eventually it did. Eventually we actually started moving the pistons, again with the pipe wrench on the front of the crank. So we spent several months getting that engine, and that only sat outside for 3 years. This one had sat out for 25 years. So I was almost positive we were going to have to dismantle most of this engine to do the same. As it turned out, as you may have seen in some of the video, the starter turned it from the very first time we tried it, and surprised the heck out of me.
I don't think you had ever told me the story of the Impala getting it running again.
I didn't want to scare you too much.
Well, but even not knowing that, just understanding.
Well, I told you it may need to be turned down.
Yeah, and you know, I was envisioning the same horror story that you were. I thought this month marks a year since we brought this thing out here, and I thought at best by this point we'd have the engine out on a stand and working on it. Instead, we just put new tires on it today and drove it around. So it's all gravy from here.
It's way better than I expected it to ever come out. So
yep, absolutely.
Okay. One other thing that two things actually. I don't really know exactly why. I just knew I was going to be driving it in parades which I've driven in 6 or 7 band festival parades in Mason City, Iowa. I used to love driving in the parades, take the queens around.
Homecoming queens.
Homecoming queens,
Right.
I should say, yes. No, not homecoming, band queens.
Oh,
The,
okay.
the band
Sorry.
band queen. So I knew I did not want to have the Toyota Chevrolet logo put on the trunk of the car. So I told them that. And they said, yeah, well, no, we have to do that. And I said, no, I'm going to take it off. So don't put it on because it's not going to be on the car. I don't want it on the car. Sorry.
And this is an actual, much like
It's almost identical to the badge on the front here.
right.
It was a
It's not a sticker like a lot of places.
no
do
no now they put just a sticker on there.
Right.
This was it was
It's an actual-
plastic. It wasn't metal, but it was plastic. But it was a badge like that.
Right.
Pretty good size. They were nice. I just didn't want it on the car, and I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. Didn't think about it. I thought it had like pins or bolts that went through, and they would fasten it from the back. So I figured I had to drill holes. Turns out they just stuck it on. It was a sticker. But it was a pretty good sticker. They were not easy to get off. Anyway, I told them not to put it on. Came to pick up the car on that Friday.
Mm-hmm.
It had a sticker on it. Toyota Chevrolet. I said, I'm not taking that car until you get that sticker off. And they said, no, it's all right. I said, no, I'm serious. Dead serious. I will not take that car until you take that sticker off. Well, we'll see what we can do. So it was another hour, and they took it back in the back, and they took the sticker off because I figured there was holes. I really did. I thought there'd be holes. They just heated it and got it off. So I didn't. So that was that sticker. The other sticker is back in the day, and I think it's actually still true. I think they call it the Mahoney sticker, but the actual window sticker the manufacturer produces that shows everything that's on the car, on a new car, has to be on there. Back then, it was entirely a sticker. Very, very strong adhesive, so it would stick on there for a whole year if the dealer had it sitting on his lot. It didn't fall off.
Mm-hmm.
It was pasted on there. The only way you could really get them off was with a razor blade, and I took it off with a razor blade after I got the car, but I just scraped it off in pieces. I did not carefully take it off and save it, which smart people that buy cars and going to keep them for collector's items like to have those stickers, especially at car shows, so mine got ruined, and I've regretted that many times that I destroyed my sticker. I didn't know. I didn't care at the time, but
You just wanted your car.
yeah, I wanted my car, indeed. So between the car carrier guy wanting me to drive it off and me scraping the sticker off, there's a lot goes with this car.
Indeed. And stories yet to be told.
Hopefully,
She lives.
I fully expect Aaron to get this all restored, repainted, reupholstered a little bit,
Yep.
new top, and to perhaps drive in the parade with my granddaughter and or grandson
Mm-hmm.
riding on the back in the parade, just because. Oh, one more. Well, I'll stick one more in here.
Okay.
75, I got it. I drove in actually, I did not drive that year because Band Festival Parade is the Saturday before Memorial Day weekend. So the next year, I'd had it for a year. I drove in the parade the Lake Mills Band Queen that year. The next year, I was there and drove the Band Queen from Lake Mills. And because convertibles had quit being made, there weren't enough convertibles by any means, because there used to be 30 and 40 Band Queens. There's a few less now, but back then there was a lot of bands. And there was a 76 Eldorado convertible that the guy had gotten earlier in the year, so his was brand new, and he got to take the very first Band Queen, because they stacked this up in car order then, and I told them that I had to take my Queen. They assured me that on my second trip around I'd get to take Lake Mills Queen because she was back further in the line. So they took the 76 first, then me, and then more cars after that. And I got back around and I got my Lake Mills Band Queen, and I got back around and they kept asking everybody to take another round if they could, because there were more bands and there weren't enough cars. And there were a lot of guys that only went around once and left. They wouldn't do it. And I ended up taking 3 Queens that year. So it would be 76. No, 77 actually. It was 77. I took 3 Queens around. And I did a few. I've done 6 or 7 band festival parades, hauling Queens around. I've been in other parades with it. It's just a wonderful car for parade.
Indeed. We'll get her tip top again and
Get her in the parade.
get her back in the parades.
So another interesting story about this car was Willie was professional cake decorator before we were married, and when we moved her to Lake Mills, she continued to be cake decorator, not professionally, but still quite a bit of cake decorating. She was in the International Cake Decorator Society, so she studied and kept up her craft on cake decorating. A few years after we were married, I don't remember exactly when, but anyway, she had become friends with Chris Branstad when they lived in Lake Mills. And Chris is the wife of Governor Branstad at the time. Chris talked to Willie about coming down to visit them in Terrace Hill at the governor's mansion, and she wanted Willie to make a cake for Terry's birthday. So Willie decorated a cake, and we packed it up in the back seat of the car and drove down. I believe we took kids with.
I don't remember this.
I don't,
But probably, yeah.
probably just the 2 older ones, pretty young then. And we went down to visit them in Terrace Hill and take Terry a surprise birthday cake. So it's not everybody gets to make a birthday cake for the governor.
That's true.
So I thought about one more story, one more reason to give an explanation of why there was a trailer hitch on this car. And after Aaron took it off and I saw the video of it, I really couldn't remember why I put it on there, because I didn't have anything that I needed to pull around with this car, until I remembered that in 1980, when Willie and I got married, I needed to pull a U-Haul of all Willie's stuff, including an upright freezer that we still have to this day, from Denver back to Lake Mills. So that's in the summer of 1980, I put that trailer hitch on there, and Aaron just took it off recently with a little extra work to get that off of there.
A little bit.
It'd been on a while. I think I pulled a boat one time out to Rice Lake My neighbor had a boat in Albrackie, and I think we pulled it out one time. Other than that, the U-Haul and the one time with the boat. The only time I've ever used that hitch.
Still not sure if it's going back on or not.
I wouldn't put it back.
Probably not.
Nah, it's not necessary.
No.
You aren't gonna pull anything.
That's why I got the truck.
You got a truck.
All right, well, I think we've pretty well run out of stories.
That's about enough for that, isn't it?
Yeah. For now, anyway.
It is. If we think of any really impressive stories, we'll come back to you later.
Indeed. As always, thank you for watching. Tell your friends and your enemies. And I'm going to come up with a catchphrase at some point to
Even
sign
strangers, we don't.
Yeah. But, yeah, that's all we got for you. Thanks for watching.
Goodbye.